Yo, episode 31 of the Put On Podcast. I got my co-host here, Derek, and we've got a very special guest today, Mr. First Class Jerk himself, Adam Lovick. Adam, what's good? How are you?
Yo, thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm pumped to be here. Derek, it's good to see your face. Cal, you just told me you were in Mexico and we're in Thailand, so I'm excited to catch up with you as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So you and Derek work together. That's the connection. What like Derek's
Yes,
talked
sir.
a lot about you, Adam, but yeah, what's the story there?
I was at Vayner at a media publishing company called 1:37 p.m. I couldn't give you a real definition around the role, but I was kind of in the creator department. So we were responsible for how are we going to tell stories on social.
Sure.
And so that was kind of where I would step in. It was about a year and a half into my time there, and we were kind of expanding maybe a little too rapidly. But we needed to fill a position under the creative director role, and Derek was the person that stepped into that role, and it was I think a year. D, how long did we work together? It was a year and a half, maybe.
Maybe a little bit under a year and a half.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I remember just like getting there, and you were one of the very first people I met, and I was like, "Who is this handsome devil of a guy?" And by the way, I'm rocking a throwback 1:37 p.m. hat today. I don't know if you noticed that.
I should have thrown mine on. You should have
R.I.P.
told me. Yeah, R.I.P. So Derek stepped into a creative director role, and him and I were working on a variety of projects together, more on the production side. So more towards the end of our time there, Derek was kind of overseeing our shows. We were launching shows, and then I was kind of stepping in on how it was going to present on social. And so we interacted quite a bit, worked on a variety of projects, and fortunate to call him a friend today.
I mean, the truth is we did a lot of like what I would consider creative development, like trying to like concept shows and come
There
up
you
with
go.
ideas. A lot of them that never got off the ground, but that we had a great time kind of like
Yeah.
putting together. And I think, something that I really kind of admire about Adam is just he had such a great kind of take and knowledge on just social content and storytelling. I feel like I learned a lot from him, and there's a lot of stuff that I've kind of carried over into the shit that I do now. I have to point this out. One of my favorite all-time moments at the company, we're having a all hands on Zoom in front of the entire organization, right? This might be, I don't, how many people were at that company? Like, how many people on this Zoom?
I think that
Hundreds?
hundreds, yeah, hundreds. I think maybe 100 plus, maybe close to two. Yeah.
Yeah. And Gary's talking, and then all of a sudden we're hearing, somebody talking, somebody's not on mute, and it's Adam, and he's ordering a rotisserie chicken in the middle of this all
Yeah.
hands. It
I
was
did.
incredible. And
I
bro,
did.
I did not
Yeah.
let him hear the end of it after that.
Oh.
Like I was photoshopping rotisserie chickens onto his head and sending them to our Slack channel and just all types of shit.
It's so funny that that's the takeaway, and like and so bright. Like it makes so much sense. I mean, it was a pretty. I wouldn't even say embarrassing because I think everyone got a good laugh, and at that point, a lot of people in the company were maybe too stressed because I think it was like whenever we had all hands, all team calls, it was like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? Yeah, I was ordering a rotisserie chicken from like the meat market up the road. You got to put orders in advance. It's
That's
like a
hilarious.
$50 rotisserie chicken, you know?
That's so funny.
It was a wholesome moment. It was
It
a
was.
really wholesome moment.
It was.
No,
It was. It was a wholesome moment.
that's amazing. Yeah, I wish I was on that all hands. I guess, how far did you get though until you realized that everyone could hear you? Like, was the chicken ordered, or it hadn't been ordered yet?
Your phone must
Yeah,
have been blowing up, or like you're getting text messages on
I
the
was.
side, right?
Yeah, I was getting a lot of text messages, and then the meeting chat was blowing up, and so at that moment when I'm hearing the, I started to realize I was no longer I wasn't on mute. So I don't know how that happened. Just one of those like little hiccups you get. The whole mute thing.
Yeah.
The Zoom call mute thing. So
No, it
yeah, it slipped.
happens to the best of us. But yo,
Yeah, exactly.
so So to get a bit deeper into you, where and obviously first class jerk, where does your love for travel come from?
Yeah, my love for travel. Well, like I tell this story often on my family's business, which started in 1984. My grandparents started the travel agency. I'm from Minnesota,
Yep.
and so my father joined the business not long after it started. And then as time went on, he kind of became, part owner. And in my early days, like we were always around it, right? Like we were always going on trips, what a lot of people would call incentive trips or fam trips, familiarizing trips. So we were traveling a lot, right? We had the great luxury of like going on vacations and doing spring break, staying at hotels, and a lot of memories come from that. And so I think where it started was it was just in the blood from the get, right? Like I was around it.
Yeah.
Travel agency land back in the day was a huge business, right? Like they were issuing tickets. Like think of
Yeah.
that. They were issuing tickets and sending like airplane tickets, boarding tickets in the mail, right? So that was the era of travel agency, and so the magazines, the offices, like my family had 5 or 6 offices in the Twin Cities, and so I would always bounce around with him, clean storage units out, paint office walls, and I would always remember the magazines, right? Like print was big, and if you wanted information on Africa or cruising, like there was a specific magazine, and you would flip to the pages and you'd see the photos. And I remember that pretty vividly. And so travel was always a part of my life, and I was fortunate to join the business kind of during and then after college. And I spent about 4 years there leading up to COVID. And so my love definitely started. As like a family affair.
Okay.
It was a family business. But I think, as I grew older, I had a strong appreciation for hospitality and building experiences for people. Like I I don't I'm not going to sit here and say I am hosting parties and throwing dinner events, but I love the idea of hosting, and I love the idea of making an impression on someone, and I feel like I have a good understanding of what makes a good experience, and whether that's in an airplane seat, whether that's in a hotel room or a restaurant. I think I've always had energy around that and passion for it, and I think I developed maybe just at an early age what it means to create a good experience or what is a good experience, and that curiosity has continues to kind of drive the projects we're working on today.
So then when did it kind of, merge into getting into travel content, and kind of tell us the origin story of First Class Jerk?
Yeah, that's a good question because the content stuff. When I was at the company was called Travel Leaders, that was the agency,
Okay.
and so my role at the agency, I came in as like I was the son of the owner, and I was the, I was the grandchild of the other owner, and so I kind of came in with not like not confidence or just eagerness to like make an impact. And at that time, it was when social,
Nepotism.
yeah, nepotism. There you
You're a
go.
nepo baby.
Yeah, I'm a nepo baby. But listen, like I grew up middle class. Like my family worked. My grandmother still works to this day for this company. She's
That's
74.
awesome.
Wow.
So
Wow.
like this wasn't like we were running an empire, right? It was a family business, but like
Yeah.
we it was just a complete top to bottom passion for the industry. And so at the time I joined the business, social was becoming more popular, was becoming more of a thing. 2016, 2017, 2018, Instagram. Um, so at the time, I kind of came in with this idea that we were going to start publishing and making content for social to promote the business and grow awareness, both locally and nationwide, whatever, more of a local presence. And so I was on the social team. I was creating content on my own channel at the time, and I had this urge and this drive to like become a videographer. That was like the initial intention. It was like peak travel influencing, right? Think Jay Alvarez, think
Yeah.
Sam Colder. Like these people were making a difference on social. Like when Jay Alvarez dropped YouTube videos, people would go crazy. Alexis Ren, if anyone remembers this, like the best soundtrack jumping out of helicopters. Like that world was kind of exploding at the time, and I picked up a camera. I was creating content. I was pitching podcasts. So we'd sit down with some of our reps or our clients that would come into the office. I would say, tell us about what you're building, tell us about your product. And so I at the start was like very in the weeds of like, let's make content and let's tell stories and share the value that a travel agency can bring. So that was kind of my role. Granted, I was doing a variety of other things, like I said earlier, like painting office walls or like cleaning storage units. Like that was very much a part of my day to day. It wasn't just like traveling, gallivanting around the world and making content. I did have a lot of great opportunities, but it started with an interest in creating content. I got an understanding of what it means to be behind the camera and be in post production, developing the content. And then I started publishing on my own channels, which, I was fortunate in 2018, 2019 to grow like a moderate size audience. And that's like the pre-story to First Class Jerk. My time at this is a long fucking story, so apologize. I try to make this.
No.
I think, as I was building content for travel leaders, I was also building content for my channels. I was traveling to places like Jordan and Fiji and Egypt and, going all over the US, doing a lot of like Central America stuff in Mexico. And so I thought it was like, wow, like I get these amazing opportunities, like why not share them? And so, as my time at Travel Leaders kind of grew and, as time went on, before the pandemic, I was creating a lot of content. I was doing a lot of TikTok stuff. We kind of, let's call it February 2020, we all recognized the travel industry was probably going to be greatly impacted.
Of course.
I was let go by my grandma, and that's when First Class Jerk started. First Class Jerk started with the intention of, listen, this is my fucking thing. Like, I want to be in travel. Whether I work for Travel Leaders or not, I'm going to be involved and I'm going to share what I believe is important about this industry. At the time, I probably wasn't thinking that because I was just publishing like random news and like curating stuff it was more of a, I don't want to say meme page, but it was like a way to like curate and share things on Instagram, predominantly on Instagram. And that's kind of how it started. I think, this has been like 6 months full time as of today, but
Let's go.
Parallel pathing a lot of my stuff at Vayner, and this thing has just kind of continued on and has grown, and the vision has gotten more clear over time. But that's kind of how it started. And today, we consider ourselves a media publisher, telling stories around luxury travel products. So that's. I
want to ask you two really quick questions. One, because I need to just hear the story. Any hard feelings towards grandma for laying you off from her company, or?
Listen, I don't blame her at all. Like I was the easiest fire, right? That just made so much sense. Like we're gonna fire the grandson. Like we're gonna fire the kid who works in the marketing department of 3 people. So I don't blame her. Granted, I do still believe I could drive a lot of value for that company, but I'm very hands off at this point. Her and I have a lot of conversations, more her than my father, but still go on trips together and still talk business. Still working there to this day, as I mentioned, and still from afar tapped in, but no like immediate involvement.
And then the other question I just had, First Class Jerk as a name. Tell me, what was the thinking behind that name, and were you at all concerned about, the negative connotations associated with the word jerk?
Yeah, totally. I think to answer the second question, there's transparently that's in the back of my mind, because when I started I wanted to have a travel brand. I was far less approaching this as like, I want to be a travel influencer. More recently, I would say in the last few years, I've taken that approach. Like I want to build a brand. I want to be the person behind the brand. That thought has definitely been in the back of my mind around the negative connotations. But what I will say is the idea has always been, we want an airline or a hotel to stamp our name on their walls, figuratively speaking, and we want to be affiliated with these players. And I do have hesitations around that name maybe being a hurdle. With that said, I think it's important for our brand to have that irreverence, and maybe some would say it's maybe more memorable. But I
For
think the
sure.
name, I think the name for us is important because we want to be different, and we often think people that work in this industry take it too seriously. And so we don't have any intentions of changing that name unless we run into like some serious business issues. But we haven't seen that quite yet.
It's
It
bold,
is.
and that's what I like about it. And it also, it's like, if you run into some company that's like, oh, we don't like the brand and the it's like, well, you're not the right brand to work with in my mind. I don't know how you feel about, I don't think I would change the brand off of somebody not wanting to work with you or any sort of hurdles. It's like, that's who
Yeah.
you are. That's like core to like what the brand is. So
Yeah, it's our identity for sure. It's our identity. And we won't waver to people that feel negatively about our name. I think if you look at the content that we put out and what we stand for and what we share, we're not taking it from an approach of like being an asshole, right? Like
Yeah.
it's more of just being memorable. And we often get that feedback when we hand out business cards at events that, wow, like first class, that's interesting. Like you wouldn't say that if it said first class traveler, right? Like
Yeah.
people wouldn't give a shit.
right,
And so
it's a
we
conversation starter.
exactly. So we see it as such.
Speaking of doing things differently, one thing, First Class Jerk is known for the trade checks. How did that come about, and what has it been to see so many people catch on to that?
Yeah, it's funny. I thought it was a much bigger thing, right? Like we are going to stamp trade check, but then I'm always reminded, well, who the hell started fit check, right? Like, and so maybe they're not comparable, but in a lot of ways, I was under the impression that we were making a movement, and
No doubt.
I still think we are because it's an interesting thing, right? I think people are curious what you're doing on a plane. I think that's one thing. And then I think too, it's just there's a lot of like the Biscoff, the ginger ale, the tomato juice. There's a lot of like relationship with product and in flight. And
100%.
so how did it start? I started it on my channel, just like taking a photo and then asking people to submit theirs, and it stuck. And I will say, like, we received so many of these photos, and I'm like, it just makes me smile. Like, anytime we see one, like, it truthfully makes me smile. For someone to be like, I'm going to take a trade check at 30,000 feet because we like this brand, or like we want to see a rating, or
Yeah,
like they know about it from a friend, like that is so fulfilling. Like people
I
don't
bet.
understand how pumped it makes me when I see a tray check. Like it's fucking awesome. It's so cool.
That's
Well,
So
dope.
it's
yeah,
like you hit on something. It's like you hit on something that works, right?
yeah,
And whenever you like come up with some sort of clever idea that works and it comes to fruition, there's nothing better. But
totally.
it's also just like something that's so associated with the brand, which is great. And to your point, there's something voyeuristic about being able to see somebody's like tray. For me, every single time now I'm on a plane and I'm drinking a ginger ale, I think about Adam Lovick. Like I have your face in my mind. I don't know why. Ginger ale
Yeah,
specifically, right? Because you're like so big
Can
on
yeah,
ginger
Yeah.
ale. But
yeah.
The Canada Dries though, right? Canada Dry ginger ale is number one.
Yeah, yeah, we are partial to Canada Dry, and what we're coming to realize is there's only select few airlines that carry it.
Not,
But yes, Canada Dry is much better. It's like Diet Coke to Pepsi, right? So
I mean,
yes,
we
Diet Coke over Pepsi, Canada Dry over others.
that's got to be a sponsor for you,
but
right? Canada Dry. You got to
yo,
go after the
We've
Canada Dry
approached.
people.
we got to get you over to
Yeah,
Canada
yeah,
You've
because
approached them.
every flight I'm on, Canada, bro, every airline in Canada's got the Canada Dry. If you come my side, yeah, that Canada Dry sponsorship's right there, bro. Air Canada,
it's funny.
WestJet.
We've reached out to them. Yeah, WestJet, Air Canada. Yeah, we've reached out to Canada Dry, and if I'm not mistaken, they're owned by Dr. Pepper. But that's a tough team to crack, and they do a lot of interesting things on social.
They do.
In my opinion, the voice that they have on social very much aligns with ours. And if anyone has any connects to Canada Dry, I think there's a great opportunity from a trade check perspective.
So you mentioned that you've been doing this now full time for the last 6 months or so. So what's next for you and kind of the FCJ brand?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's myself. The team is built out as such, myself, and then a business partner, my close friend and roommate who I lived with in New York City for 2 years, who now lives in Madison, Wisconsin. I think, initially our approach was always we're a multidisciplinary travel brand, right? Like we wanted to do everything. We weren't going to put ourselves into a corner. We make content for the internet around cool and interesting travel stories, right? That is our approach. I think our focus is how can we build the community? How can we tell stronger stories that are native to the platforms that we're on? I think that is first and foremost our goal. Like, how can we make people more aware of what we're building and the stories that we're telling? I think what then comes from that is you build a community and then you build interesting products around it, right? So whether that's we've had a lot of conversations around events, pop-up events in New York in collaboration with tourism boards or airlines or hotels.
Okay.
I think that's a great opportunity because quite frankly, travel trade shows and travel events historically have sucked. For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I think that's an opportunity for us. I think a lot of people talk to us about merchandising, which I think you have to do really right. Like we're not going to come and slap logos onto a Gildan blank, right? So I think we've been thoughtful about it, but we're not there yet. And then there's a variety of other things like digital and physical products like merchandise, but digital products we're actually working on one now, which is to roll out soon. But yeah, I think the business is kind of a three-prong approach. We make stories for the internet. We're a media publisher. I think events is in our future, and then I think products, both digital and physical. But first and foremost, like we have taken an approach that most people in our industry, in the travel and hospitality industry, have kind of fallen behind, fallen back. I think their social approach and their voice lacks a lot of connection. And so I think we see a gap in media and publishing.
Okay.
And so that's our focus. How can we tell better stories?
I'm fucking excited for you guys. Like,
I'm excited for you too.
Thanks. Yeah.
I gotta say, also, we got to. I think me and you gotta take a trip out to Madison, Wisconsin, because that's where I went to college and
Yeah.
the boys there. I think
Yeah.
the next trip. Yeah,
I would love
sure.
to do that. I talk highly about Madison, Wisconsin. Well, I have. There's some gripes. It's an interesting city. There's a lot of growth and development happening there. But I'd love that at UW, man, Badger. That's insane. Were you ever at the
What are
frat
the
houses?
gripes? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
give me the gripes.
The frat houses have okay, Cal, if you don't know, the frat houses are on the lake and they have docks. They have
no
100-yard docks in their backyard.
Holy
Dude,
fuck.
it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's
insane.
crazy.
Crazy.
Madison is my gripes are, I think, well, it's probably not to be shared, but I think it's just there's not a lot of action, right? There's just very little. If you're a college student, it's amazing. If you're a 30-year-old trying to build a business, it makes zero fucking sense. So I think there's a little of that, but I think to raise a family, it's a great place. It's a great place.
It's a great college town. I will say this: #1 party school in the country.
I don't think many people would argue. I don't think many people would argue.
We gotta take you there one day. It's incredible. It's the best.
Yeah. And go to a Badger football game.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than going to a Badger football game. And obviously once it gets very, very cold out, not as good, but in the fall, in the spring, summertime, beautiful.
Yeah.
Tundra in the winter.
Tundra.
Let's segue to
let's move on.
Travel put on, put off segment. This is a good one. So yeah, Adam, we got 15 different things. And we're just going to hit you. And again, you're going to say whether it's a put on or a put off and give a little explanation. But D, you go first.
Sure. And they're not all travel, but this first one is red eyes.
This is tough, dude. This is tough. I just took a red eye flight and I fucking hated it. But what I'll say they're probably underrated. So I'm going to say put on. I'm saying put on for red eye flights because I think they're cheaper And I think if you're willing to like kind of hustle and bustle, wake up in a new city and go on with your day, it's the best way to take advantage of. You're going to Vegas, right? You're in Vegas. Like, okay, I don't want to leave in the morning. Like, I want to spend my night here, or even the other way around. Like, I want to go to Vegas, like waking up in the morning. And like, I think there's ways you can play it. And I think it can parlay nicely into a good trip to like maximize your day. So I'm saying put on for red eye flights.
I'm with you. Next one, checking a bag.
Put off. I think checking a bag only I don't even know. I was gonna say like maybe going to Europe, but like you could probably get away with a week and a half with if you're flying Delta without checking a bag. I'm saying put off or check bag because I think there's very few instances that you need it unless you're like a fashion influencer that's taking 40 outfits for 3 days.
Got you.
Okay. How about making content out of getting let go from your job?
You're an asshole. I'm going to say, what is my reflection? How did I? How can I? This is all going to
become a trend, by the way. I see it all the time with people like videotaping themselves on the call when they're getting let go. But
yeah, I think
you did it.
I think it was because I was segueing it into a new venture. It made sense because it was an opportunity to maybe share a little bit about what I was going to do. I think to be an asshole and shame the company for letting you go, maybe not. So there's context missing here. I didn't do that. I made content to tell the story, to then tell people that I'm leaving this company. And because I made 1:37 p.m. a little bit of my identity, right? Like people knew I was affiliated with that company. I was making sure they knew I was no longer affiliated, and I am now going full in on this new brand. And so for that, I'll say put on. For the former, I would say put off.
Okay. Hostels.
Put on. I think put on. I think, listen, like we don't be mistaken. I talk about the best luxury travel products in the world, but there is never a time I will turn my nose or raise my nose or eyebrow to someone traveling in a hostel or backpacking. I will never forget living out of a van, backpacking Europe. Those were some of the were some of the best travel experiences of my life. I've stayed in some great hotels. I've been on some of the best cruise ships. Like I've done a lot of amazing things. I'm very fortunate, very grateful. But my time in hostels, my time carrying around a backpack, my time living out of a van in Iceland were some of my fondest travel memories. So put the fuck on.
Let's go.
All right. I know you're a first class jerk, first class guy, but if you're in economy and there's a grown man sitting behind you, reclining your seat.
I think, should I say, okay, I don't know the format here. I feel like I have to over explain, so I apologize. And Steven, you're going to have to cut up some stuff here. But
well, wait, before you do that, I want you to say either put on or put off,
I know
and
you
then
do.
give me your
I
explanation.
know you fucking do. I know you do. I'm going to say put off. I'm going to say put off, but there's some this is a situational thing. I think there's an appropriate way to go about reclining your seat. You can either go like this. Hey, sir, you mind if you know what I mean? Like there's some decorum there. And like you got to read a room. Like, is it a kid? Is it a 6'5" human behind you? His knees already touching the seat. Like you have to have some decorum. So I'm going to say put off, but I do think there's instances that might make sense for you to recline.
Okay. Full cage hockey helmet.
It's not a very straightforward. I'm sorry, Kel. Ask that again.
You're good.
Ask that again.
You're good. Full cage hockey helmet. Full cage.
Full cage. Yeah, not many people know I play hockey. I'm gonna say, well, I'll say put off. I'll say put off. I played junior hockey. I played college hockey. In junior hockey, you're allowed to wear a visor. In college hockey, you have to wear a cage. You know what? Fuck it. I'm saying fuck it. I'm saying put on. Put on because I've seen far too many instances where people lose their teeth. I mean, there's a lot of sad things that have happened on an ice rink. I don't know if a cage would help most of these things. I was fortunate to have all my teeth after my career, but I do think like people wear bubbles. You know, if you heard of a bubble, where it's just like a half shield, but they also have the mouth mask, face mask thing. So there's ways around it. I think it doesn't look as cool to wear a full cage. But in the pros, a lot of people just understand the game. You know, like less high sticking. Like they have a level of respect. But you know, things happen on the ice that you can't control, and so I'll say put on for the sake of safety.
Respect.
Okay, what about this new up-and-coming comedian that everybody's talking about named Sean Malay?
Put on, man. Put on. My boy Sean is just like, we saw this. And this isn't short, I'm sorry. I have so much respect for Sean because of how much he was willing to like grind his face off. The guy was working, and then after work, he would go to stand up till like 12. And like, he was so in the cut of comedy culture. Like okay, here's a great story, and I'm sorry. Tim Dillon shared a video that we posted on his podcast. I texted Sean. I was like, "Hey, Sean, I wanted to tell you, 45 minutes into a Tim Dillon podcast, he shared a video of ours. Whatever. It was cool. It was cool to like share. A lot of people sent it to us, and he's like, "I'm sitting right next to Tim Dillon." He says, "Cool." And this was within 5 minutes. And I'm just like, that Sean. And there's a reason he's sitting right next to Tim Dillon. And whether or not he has a Netflix special right now, like we were there and we saw him in the weeds of comedy, and he's just naturally a funny guy. His Amish bits were just fun. I mean,
so funny.
We could talk about it all day. Put on Deshaun Malay, he's a forever guy. Like he's going to be in the game forever. And so, yes, it's only a matter of time where more people will know his name. And I have so much love and respect for that guy.
Shout out to Sean. Talk about a guy that did not belong in a corporate environment. I mean, that guy, he was hilarious to just be around. Oh my God.
What you can either or you don't. It was just so blatantly obvious. Like, what was he doing up there? But like, you know, it's a grind to be in comedy in New York City. Like his homies were living in vans. Like they were grinding, just grinding. Like the arts are like, it's a grind. And he was like, he was bulletproof, you know, in terms of like, he wouldn't show up on time, but he was there, you know, every so often.
Okay. Minnesotan accents.
D's going to give me a hard time for this. I'm saying put on. I'm put on Minnesota accents. I think you can't forget where you came from. And a lot of people give me shit for saying bag or bagel or roof. All these things. I would say I probably don't have it as much as others, but I in the office I would get a lot of shit for how I would say certain words. But put on, Minnesota boy.
I love the accent. I love the Minnesota accent. It reminds me of probably a show before both of your guys' times, cartoon Bobby's World, where the mom would always say, "Bobby, don't you know?" And I used to talk a lot of shit to Adam about his accent. By the way, I do the same thing with Cal. Cal calls pasta.
So does the rest of the world.
Well, that's some Canada weird shit over there, though. I love my Canada boys.
How about taking pictures of your meals and sharing it on social media?
You're so funny. Put on, because I am not a chef, but people do make great meals for me, and I like to share the appreciation for those meals, and I do think they are brag worthy. I don't know. That's an odd one. I'll say put on because I like food and people make me great food. My partner makes me great food all the time, and I think there's great photos to be had with some of the meals.
I agree.
I think sometimes I see you share like your breakfast, like your brunches on the weekend, and they always look good. It always makes me want to eat like eggs and like avocado and
Yeah.
avocado toast or whatever, all the fancy kind of breakfast
Yeah.
brunch meals that you have.
Breakfast is the best meal, I would say. Like
Best meal.
nothing
Yeah,
beats
agreed.
bacon, egg, and cheese, a croissant, sandwich. Like it's just nothing beats coffee, the smell of bacon in the morning, syrup, butter, like nothing beats it. So I know that's a little besides the point, but if I have an opportunity to share a little bit about my breakfast, it means I'm having a great day.
Okay.
I feel that.
It's funny that you brought this pre-pod zins.
This can go on the audio format, but we're not going to post this one on social. I'm put on for Zins. I think, listen, like you can throw this on social. I was around hockey all my life,
Yeah.
right? And like similar to baseball, chewing tobacco was very much a part of the hockey lifestyle. And so I chewed tobacco. In junior hockey, we had tubs of tobacco in the locker room. And so, they would resurface in intermission. So after the first period and after the second period, come back into the locker room. And me and my friends, we would take our fingers in the tub and we'd throw it in our lip and it'd sit there for 10 minutes. Like it was very much a part of the culture. I think more recently, the whole Zen movement is what they would say is a healthier alternative, right? It's just nicotine. And so I think it is probably a long-term problem because of the rise of nicotine pouches. If you've seen Zyn sales charts over the last few years, it is a hockey stick. It is the epitome of a hockey stick, and it's an epidemic because I can't even go to a bodega or a station here in the city and find Zyn. It's just not available. There's a shortage of Zyn. People are chewing it. I think it's a healthier alternative to tobacco, and it's a part of culture these days.
Are you an upper deck guy, upper decky, or you go lower, bottom?
It moves around.
Oh, okay.
It moves around just because I probably do it too much and areas get sore. So it moves around.
Okay.
But yeah, oddly enough, we're going on a golf trip this weekend for my buddy's bachelor party.
Oh, let's go.
And, the first question that was asked was, are we going to be stocked and loaded with Zins? Because we're going to be in the middle of nowhere, right? Not many people are going to, you always have to prepare for those types of things.
Of course.
And so there's nothing better than a beer and a Zin with your homies on a golf course. And so I'll say put on.
This might be a leading question, and I probably think I know the answer to this, but how about working at big corporations?
It's funny. I'll say put off. I don't. That's a kind of an odd. That's an odd one. I'll say.
No, sorry.
I'll say put off because I think there's a lot of. Listen, there's so many variables here. Like the job market is probably not the best. There's probably more jobs available at bigger companies. They might pay you more. They might have better benefits. As a business owner myself, like you don't acknowledge what is actually provided when working at a big company, like health insurance, right? Like I don't have health insurance. Like I don't have it right now.
Right.
So that's a big thing. And so I would say working at a big company you have your gripes, right? Like not a lot of culture, not a lot of movement. I think our situation was very non-conventional, unconventional. I think it was more of a modern big company, still 2,000 employees, globally owned. But I think there's a lot of benefit to working at a company of that size. And you're going to have your gripes anywhere. Like you'll work at a small business and there just won't be enough cash. You'll end up doing a ton of different things. You'll work at a big business and you'll have your lane and your vertical, but you want to do more. So the grass isn't always greener. There's pros and cons to both sides.
There's trade-offs.
Yeah.
Trade-offs.
It's a good point. Yes.
There's trade-offs.
And what about raw dogging a flight?
The whole put off. The videos you see of people raw dogging flights are probably 90% fake.
100%.
Like, listen, it was a trend and a fad, but I will say the term will live on, right? Like, which is an interesting thing. You might not see as many videos. Like, I'm raw dogging a flight to Asia. Like, you might not see those videos. It was just kind of like a social trend. Those kind of come in waves. But the word, it will be in the Urban
For
Dictionary,
sure.
right? Like raw dogging a flight. I would say that the term kind of sounds terrible to some degree, but I think put off because it's probably fake.
Okay.
And what else say? What else say? Raw dogging a flight has its perks. Like especially with Wi-Fi now so accessible on planes, we're probably just
Wait. Before you talk about the perks, for somebody that doesn't know, just real quick description of what is raw dogging a flight.
It's when someone takes a flight without a carry-on, without anything, and they go on the flight and they do nothing but like what's available. So there's no phone, there's no like you don't get entertainment, you don't get to watch TV. I believe what's also a part of raw dogging a flight is you don't get drinks or snacks. I could be mistaken. The definition got a little murky, but it's essentially you're going on a flight with nothing. Right? There's no bag, there's no backpack. You're just going on with your phone because you probably need it for a boarding pass, but you can't use it. So like a limited flight, no entertainment kind of vibe. So yeah, I mean, put off. I think it's lame, but I do think we could be a little bit more cognizant of like maybe taking the window seat and just like looking out, or like reading the newspaper or reading a book. I think has its perks and benefits. I think flying at 30,000 feet is like the best place for me just to sit and like think and brainstorm. It's like a shower, right? The best ideas like kind of happen on a flight, and it's a good way to utilize your time, whether that's work or like journaling, reading. I think it's like a pretty peaceful place to be. And so raw dogging maybe has some perks.
It's interesting that you compared it to a shower, because that's where I get all my best ideas. And you're right. It's like sometimes when you're on the plane and you're just stuck in some confined space, it's like that's where you can get the most creative. That's where you have some time to reflect. But we're almost finished here. One of the last ones, packing cubes.
So I'm packing cubes. My initial reaction is put off, because I think there's better ways that you can pack, and I think they probably take up more space. But I do think there's a level of organization that makes sense. And so I know a lot of these answers I'm giving are like, I could always justify the other side. I'm saying confidently put off packing cubes because you can roll your clothes and you don't need it. I think it's far more benefit from an organization side, less efficiency of space.
Okay. What about yellow taxis?
Unless you're like, I'm sorry, Cal, you have to ask that again. Unless you're like vacuum sealing, you know what I mean? But I don't know people that actually do that.
Next one.
Go ahead, Cal.
Almost done. Yellow taxis.
Yeah, I think there's some nostalgia to it, right? I think it's just a tough market when Uber and Lyft are so much cheaper, and it's so like you can't track them. There's no like if you have an issue, like who do you call, right? So I think it's like comparing debit cards to credit cards, right? I think to some degree, like there's more security with Uber and Lyft, and so for the again, I'm doing this, I'm catching myself, like I'm just trying to find a way to live in the middle. But I'm going to say put on, because I think there's like, I would hate to see a world where you never see another yellow cab, right? Like it's such a staple, especially in New York City. So I would say put on, maybe consider taking them, but it's like tough to say, like I'm rarely taking a yellow cab over an Uber or a Lyft, but I love it's iconic. It's iconic. So put on.
I feel like you're very nostalgic in that way. You're like an old soul in that way, where
I like
it's
to
almost
think so.
like you would have thrived in like, earlier times in the 50s or in, like, do you ever feel that way?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think like the roaring 50s, the roaring 60s. Am I saying that correctly?
I think it's the roaring 20s.
No.
You're
talking about.
No, it is. You're right. You're right.
No, but Adam, you're talking about the golden age.
I'm like Gatsby era. That's the 20s. Yeah, that's the golden. Yeah. The golden age is like the 60s, but the roaring 20s is the Gatsby. That's Gatsby. That's Gatsby. I think.
Yeah.
That's not.
But I think you're like a 50. I think you're like a 50s guy, like a Catch Me If You Can, like, that type of era.
Yeah,
That's where I see you.
I'm fascinated by like the mob families and like the Italian. Like I am really fascinated with that. And that was probably more 80s or 70s, right? Like if you think about some of those New York gangs, mob, right? If I'm not mistaken, like
I don't know. They've been around forever. They were
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
they were definitely around in the 20s
yeah,
too,
that's
because
true. Maybe our history lesson here is a little off, but I do consider myself an old soul. The Roaring Twenties is an interesting. I love Great Gatsby, but yeah, I think I'd probably sit in like the 60s, 70s. That era probably makes more sense for me. But yeah, I'm an old
all right,
soul.
last one. Outdoor hockey rinks.
I grew up on outdoor hockey rinks. We had outdoor hockey. We had a pond in our backyard. Put on to
Same.
outdoor hockey rinks. I grew up on them. I think we even like as like young kids, we would like host practices on outdoor hockey rinks, and then you'd go in the warming house after, and there someone would have a thermos with hot chocolate. That is a pastime that is like forever engraved in my brain. And so put on. That's just like Minnesota culture.
That sounds lovely. By the way, shout out to the Bemidji State Beavers, right?
Yeah, that's where I played hockey for a few years. Shout out to the Bemidji State Beavers. Still very much a part of the Alumni Association. We do a golf tournament there every year. I'm in the process of hosting a dinner for the team on a road trip because you can like sponsor a dinner. So First Class Jerk is going to sponsor a Bemidji State men's hockey dinner while they're on the road.
No shit.
So yeah, I mean, listen, like I had a like my life was hockey. Like that was my identity for so long. And it was a transition once I left the game. And I haven't picked up skates really since my last time at Bemidji. So yeah, shout out to the Beavers.
With
All
that,
right. That is the end of
yes,
it,
sir.
right?
Let's move on to the "Let Me Put You On" segment. Adam, creator, hit us.
So we talked about this, and Derek and I know a lot about this gentleman, and I brought him up briefly, and I think we all know this at this point, but I do think Brandon Shamy is just like we got to see it from the very start, from someone who really wasn't posting any content and was really managing content for a brand. He has kind of built himself a really strong, quirky, and I say quirky because he's very much into cannabis, he's very much into running, and so like as that community has grown so much, especially in New York, he has like taken this group with him, and it's just been like so fun to see. And I think we're saying this at an interesting time because the Chicago Marathon he just ran, he's been running for like 550 days in a row. Like he's just really, really put time and energy into like building around this passion of his, and it's going to pay off. And he's just a great kid, and he just deserves it. And yeah, Derek and he was a coworker of ours, like he's a homie of
Yeah,
ours. And so to see it from the start, from nothing to build it to where he is now, which is very still like grassroots in a lot of ways, but like the numbers are like really healthy. And he's just doing fun things. He's just very like organic. It's not like groundbreaking content. Like outside of what he's actually doing, which is running every day
yeah,
for 500 consecutive days. Like the content's very like human, and it's very organic, and it's very authentic to him. And like that just has paid off. And so put on to Brandon Shamy. He's a homie of ours, and I love him, and I'm like in his corner, and I'm just excited for him.
He's the best. And you're right. Like just being able to watch him from early on, and it was honestly so evident even back then that he had something there. I'll
Totally.
always remember you guys. I feel like a turning point was the two of you guys were interviewing Tim Chiasano,
Mm,
and I felt like he came out of that so inspired to kind
mm,
of like make content, and he started, putting the camera down and kind of like doing the time lapse stuff during the
yeah.
day. And then as his content has just evolved over time, there are these things that you could tell were working, like how he does the thing with the grinder,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
has these trademark things where he slaps the what
The
is
pier.
the
The pier.
yeah.
piers, and it's just like I think when you're a content creator and you start to see like what works and what doesn't, and you start leaning into the things that work, and you start to see some momentum, it's a special thing. And I'm glad that's the guy that you're putting people onto, because he's another guy I just admire, and I think the world of him, and I think sky's the limit for that guy.
Yeah, and I think you have to have him on your podcast. And I do think,
100%.
and Cal, like, with when D and I worked together, like he was out, like D would always say, when you think of Tim Chiasano, he's got this thing, right? He plays the same music, like he open POV, like they have these trademarks. And I think people underestimate these trademarks, because for Shamy, like the little clicking of the grinder and like slap, like those
Yeah.
things have like paid off. They just like they have, like, even you can't measure it, but they just have.
And it's the consistency as well. I love that. Actually lead me into
Yeah.
to my creator, but like the one guy I used to watch, Jack Cook. He's a videographer out of LA, and the
Yeah.
day in the lives, and like he got to 1,000
Yeah.
days, and like I think he's winding that down. He's got 100 more, but just like watch it. It's not like his days were anything special, but it's super authentic, and just like watching him move and the
Yeah.
breakfast, man, I just love that kind of content. And so
Can I say one last thing about Sham real quick before you
Yeah.
say your creator? The thing to me that also is so inspiring is like, you've heard the term like a functioning stoner. I mean, this guy,
Yeah.
he literally runs marathons where he's like eats gummies or smokes a joint beforehand. Like that to me is, again, as somebody who, has dabbled in the weed for a long time, it's so inspiring to see somebody who's able to like push his body to the limit while he's on that, and it's whatever. I digress. Cal, go for it. What's your creator?
It's funny, the consistency piece. It's kept popping up on my feed, and I love it because I'm a golfer as well, Adam. It's since COVID, honestly, nothing I love more than being out on the course with the lads. Again, beers, nice weather. So this one creator, Cheeky Golf Club, is the but he's playing until he makes 18 pars in a row. I think he's on day 250.
Yeah.
But just like, again, to see his progression as like a golfer, which is such a fucking hard sport to get better at, and so to see him from like day one to now day 250, and bro, like even professionals aren't getting 18 parties in a row. So I wonder how long he's going to go on with this. Like, so Cheeky Golf Club is the and it's been interesting to watch his journey. He's at like 250 days, I think.
That's a great call, Cal. I like that. Can I say something quickly?
Yeah.
Just like there's this quote, and I think D, you'll get a kick out of this. I don't like to like be all praise to Anthony Bourdain, but there is a quote by him that when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast that people have to listen to if you haven't. Rest in peace. But he said this back in like, I don't even know. I don't want to put a date on it because I'll sound like an idiot. I don't know the date exactly.
It was early days. I remember that episode. It was like, yeah, it's got to be at least 10 to 15 years by now.
And to Cal's point around consistency, when we bring up Shamy, he said this interesting quote is just timeless. If we have learned anything, right, about social, about people building brands, mediocrity is enough to be a star. You just have to be willing to play the game. And people that are doing things for consecutive, like this, they're not like, it's not like groundbreaking. Like Jack Cook isn't like going to Aruba. Like he's like just living it out. Like Shamy's like running around New Jersey. Like this dude golfing is at like county courses. Like it's just like consistency. If you're willing to play, if you're going to put the work in, like it's enough to be a star in this world. And I just think that quote, it just has forever been ingrained in my mind because it's been proven it's been just constantly proven that that's the case. And so, I don't want that to like feel like false hope to people like, oh, I can do anything. Like don't confuse your passion for hobbies, but it's just like kind of a thing that I think just validates all the creators we're sharing here.
Well, I love that you bring that up because first off, Shamy does that thing where this is day number 354 of, running. And I always think about this quote, and I don't know who said it, where it's like, if you keep going and you're consistent, like that's your only shot. Because if
Yeah.
you give up, you have no chance, right?
Yeah.
And so when me and Cal started the podcast, our thinking was like, look, let's kind of have low expectations about this, but let's just keep going, right? Let's
Yeah.
just get better. Let's just keep going. And if we keep going, I think that something's going to happen for the positive. Like, who knows? Like, maybe it doesn't become a hit podcast, but maybe it leads to something else. You just have no shot unless you are consistent, right? And so, like, sometimes it's not about being the best. It's just about doing the thing on a consistent basis. And then from there, that's how you learn. That's how you grow. I think it's a great little message and a great little quote.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't have a creator, even though I've had like a million creators. I've had times where they're like 10 creators. And obviously now I have a great creator on and I don't have a creator, but I have two little trends that I wanted to mention real quick. So one is like, I was talking last pod about this AI, like dark fantasy thing. And there's been a lot of AI content that's been popping up on my feed, but one, and I don't even have a handle for it that I can mention, but I think I'm curious if you've seen it, is like, I'll see these AI videos of this is what like a video of like the Aztecs. Like, this is what it was like in, Mesoamerica back in the day, or like AI videos of Atlantis. Who even knows if Atlantis was like real or not? And it's one of those things where you start to realize, wait a second, obviously there's no video footage, right, of like the Aztecs. So this is like the closest thing to seeing what it might look like if you were living in that time. And I get very fascinated by like where AI is going to take us. Have you seen any of those types of videos or no?
I know exactly what you're talking about. And whenever I see them, I think of you because I know how much of a history buff nerd you are. And I agree. I think the it's like limitless on like, and I think we're only going to like learn more about history because of some of this stuff. It just makes it interesting. It does. I have seen those videos and I do tend to watch them.
I love that. I love the historical part is one that I didn't even think about, but yeah, that makes sense. I am a history buff. So Cal, is there something you want to add to that before I go on to my next one? No. Okay. And then the other one is a little bit silly, but just like a little backstory. A few months ago, I had to run to the mall to get a dress shirt for some like wedding. And my wife ended up meeting me there at the mall and she wanted to run into Zara. So while I was waiting for her, I was just kind of like in Zara, wandering around aimlessly. And then I noticed I was kind of like bopping. And then I realized like this Zara playlist is kind of pretty good actually, and had like some vibey house music tracks, right? So fast forward like whatever, a couple months later, I forgot about all that. And now randomly on my feed, I keep seeing these videos where it'll be like, the text on screen will say me after losing my girlfriend in the Zara store, but the house music is going crazy. Have you seen those? And it's like somebody dancing. Or there was one where it was like me and other guys waiting for our girlfriends in the changing room while Zara is playing like underground house music. And then it's Leo and like from Wolf of Wall Street with all the guys and they're dancing.
That's
hilarious.
Awesome. Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Funny.
That's good.
It's like one of those things you notice, but then you completely forget about. And then you realize like, wait a second. All these other people have had the same experience as me of just like being in this random store and the playlist of the music just kind of like hitting in a way. So I like that trend, the Zara dance trend.
You're always good for people don't tell you this when you're trying to build something, but it's so lonely. And I just miss our office conversations because you're always good for just this random ass shit. And it's just the best. Dude.
Random office banter.
Oh my God.
I know.
Awesome.
I'm a random guy.
Adam, what is
so good? It really is.
You said you had a trend as well, probably on a very different tip than what Derek just mentioned. But what's your general trend?
Yeah, I came in a little prepared with this just because I mean it's been like an ongoing observation and it's not groundbreaking by any means, but like just generally the content shift, right? the field has gotten so competitive. Like when I'm on work trips, when I'm around other creators or influencers, these people are constantly pushing expectations. And brands are only getting smarter in the world of social influencer. I really believe, and it's like it's just happening like now that the creators are pushing the limits on how to tell a story. The quality of content is becoming better and better, and it makes me do some reflection on, okay, like this is what we're up. It's a sport, right? It's a
Yeah.
sport. Business is a sport, and the creator economy is very much a sport. Just the quality it kind of reminds me of like I've mentioned earlier, like the Sam Colder content, the Jay Alvarez content. I think these folks, these people that were very much into like creating this polished story, I think that kind of faded as TikTok kind of became more of a rise. They wanted more like authentic vlog, face to camera, man on the street stuff. But I do believe like that we'll see a little decline in that, and we'll see more of these creators that are out there that have like a really deep passion and like composition and color grading, and kind of combining this like vlog with like this art element. I think the art and the science that Gary always talks about is very much true, and I think the art is going to win in the next few years.
That's super interesting.
Is what you're saying almost like some more cinematography, almost like within kind of like the creator videos and the content that they're putting out, or like a higher production quality?
Yeah, I think production quality is becoming more relevant, where I think over the last few
Mm-hmm.
years it was less. And so what I'm seeing, or at least what I'm noticing, is like a lot of these creators, more creators, even brands, like even in hospitality, like if you think of the Ritz in Paris or Les Marousses in Paris, like if you look at their channels, like their content is above what anyone else is doing. It's polished. It tells a
Mm-hmm.
story. I'm not saying they're bringing in like Canon red cameras that cost $5,000. They're doing this on their iPhone, but the story, the
Yeah.
composition, the voiceover,
Mm-hmm.
it's just becoming so much better. Like the stories are
Yeah.
becoming better. You just cannot
Yeah.
deny it. And so I think there's going to be a little bit of a shift on how brands interact with creators, who they're tapping from a talent pool perspective, and it's just it's competition, right? What
Yeah.
competition does, it weeds out the shitty ones. And I think what's going to happen is people that want to be influencers are going to have to step up their game.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's a great point. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are coming over from like traditional media, right?
Yeah.
Like now that there's been
100%.
such a shift, and so those people are having a big impact on social now, because yeah, like this huge shift over to social, it was inevitable that
Yeah.
the production quality and some of this stuff was going to evolve.
Yeah,
Good
totally.
shout.
We're still underrate, like we're still underestimating, and I think Gary like literally posted this yesterday. We're underestimating social, like still,
Yeah.
like we're still underestimating it, and it's just like it makes me energetic about the future of storytelling and brand.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Yeah, I saw that clip from Gary, and it's crazy to me that after the amount of years that specifically him has been screaming about creating content and all the powers that be that use social, and just like, yeah, it's crazy that we're still not even close to being there yet. But I agree with you on the point that the talent, like, there'll be a massive gap between who's talented and who can story tell versus who can't, and we'll see that play out over the next few years. So yeah, no, that's a great show. Um,
Totally.
Derek, you have a couple podcasts.
I do. Okay, I'm going to do them kind of quick. So they're both, if Adam knows me, he knows that I love Tim Ferriss, who went on hiatus for a little
Yeah.
while but came back. And then, so I have two Tim Ferriss episodes. One was knowing I was going to speak to you. I was somehow reminded of this episode, and I went back and listened to it. And I'm curious if you've heard it, and Cal, if you've heard it. But from 2022, he had an episode with a guy named Boyd Varty.
I'm not.
You familiar
Dude,
with who that is?
yeah, he owns Landalzi in Africa. I know Boyd Varty. I literally
Did you
was on
listen? Have you listened to?
no, I was on
Did
an
you listen
email
to that
chain with
episode
him.
or no?
I have not,
Come
but
on.
I was literally on an email chain with Boyd Varty 3 days ago, and I
No
knew nothing
shit.
about him.
Wow.
I knew nothing about Boyd,
Oh
but
my God.
Londolzi is an incredible company who does a lot of luxury safari camps in Africa, and we have some content coming out on that. I'm sorry, Dee, I didn't mean to make this about what we're up to on that,
No,
but
I mean,
yes,
I wish we had this I wish we had the conversation before you talked to him, because if we had, so this episode is maybe top 5 of my favorite podcast episodes of all time, and knew nothing about him prior to it. But, you mentioned Boyd is a wildlife activist. He's an author. He's a lion tracker. He's a TED speaker. He's a podcast host, but he's a master storyteller, and he grew up in South Africa. You mentioned Londolozi Game Reserve, which is a renowned animal sanctuary. And basically in this episode, he tells all of these like harrowing stories of his childhood and of growing up. And basically he survived a plane crash. He had a near death attack by a crocodile that he survived. His family was held up at
Really?
gunpoint during a home invasion. And then there's one story that he tells about being attacked by a swarm of African bees, which happens to be one of the funniest stories you'll ever hear. So the thing is like I'm saying all these like, crazy like near death stories, but he's so funny and his delivery is so incredible that like it's one of the best episodes. Of course, he talks about being a lion tracker, which is crazy in its own right, and how he like fostered a profound connection to the natural world and taught him how to navigate life. And then lastly, just he talks about the philosophy of Ubuntu, which emphasizes interconnectedness, community, shared humanity. So it's just an incredible episode, and it's one of these ones where you're like, have no idea who this guy is, no idea where he came from, and you'll be thinking about it for weeks afterwards. You have to check it out.
the
Boyd
Yeah, I'm gonna
Varty on
watch
Tim
it.
Ferriss.
that's an awesome call out. And the coincidence, like the reason, like you brought that up, I don't know if if you brought that up knowing he was involved in hospitality, but that is awesome. And I knew nothing about Boyd. I was put on to Londolzi not long ago, it's Londolzi. Is that how I think you said it better.
It's spelled Londolozi, so I thought it was Londolozi,
Yeah,
but
it's
I don't know.
Londolozi. You're right. Yep. No, you're right. I
Yeah.
was saying it incorrectly, but he has a book too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it's like the guide to lion track. I forget what it
Yeah.
is, but
Yeah. But people
um
praise this guy,
just an
and
incredible episode. You gotta check it out, bro. Oh my God, it's so good.
it's the epitome of why we, again, like I don't mean to make this about us, but like it's the epitome of why we exist. The fact that people don't know who he is and he has Londolozi is like that. That's why we exist as a company, as a brand. We are driven to tell those stories. And yeah, anyway, amazing. That was awesome.
Well, if you listen to that episode, I think you'll even get more into him. And then I would love to see some
Yeah.
content made by First Class Jerk about him. The
Hell
other one
yeah.
I was just going to mention is a more recent episode. Tim had on a guest named Elizabeth Gilbert. She's an author and journalist. She's known for her best-selling books Eat, Pray, Love and Big Magic. And in the episode, she shares insights on several aspects of personal growth and creativity and spiritual practice. But she's one of these women where, like, first off, she has such a calming voice and everything she says sounds thoughtful and introspective. And she just has this kind of like aura of warmth. It's almost like you're sitting around a fireplace when you're listening to her. But the reason I want to mention is because there was one part of it that really stood out to me about the episode. And it's when she talked about overcoming what she called purpose anxiety, which she described as the pressure to constantly pursue a defined life purpose. So she suggested that embracing a more flexible view where finding peace and fulfillment in the present moment is often more meaningful than an endless pursuit of purpose. And I mention this because it obviously struck a chord with me. And I think the three of us can all relate to this since we're all very purpose driven in our own pursuits. But the fact like that there's this innate pressure that I know I feel to constantly be working towards something. And when I'm not doing that, I often feel racked with guilt or anxiety, like I'm not maximizing my time efficiently and I'm procrastinating or being lazy. But to her point, to Elizabeth Gilbert's point, it's also not sustainable, to constantly like be in that mode. And so I found it to be really helpful, like a helpful perspective of giving yourself some grace and allowing yourself to have those breaks where you could just be in the present without any obligations of things that you have to do. Like there's times where it's just like, it's okay that you're not doing anything. Right. And like, and to not always feel that like sense of like, I have to be in grind mode and I always have to be spending my time working towards this thing. I think a lot of times you get your best ideas, you get re-energized when you're able to just put that to the side and just not do anything.
100%.
I think my reaction to that is that's, I think, in a lot of ways, the benefit of even podcasting. Because while like we talk a lot about grind and we talk about business and building, like there's something to be said about like being here, talking, like not having to, like I'm not scrolling, I'm not like cooking. Like there's just something to be said about the format, the mechanism of podcasting, that it kind of lends the like pureness of like just stepping away and just like kind of chatting. I think there's something to be said there. But that's great. And
there's something, and there's, I was just going to say, there's something like really amazing when you're listening to these people who are so successful in their own, in their own different ways. And then I just love the humanistic kind of like element of podcasts where they can talk about their insecurities and like these things that, you don't see. You only see kind of like the acclaim and like the the momentous occasions, right? But the best part about like the long form is being able to talk about like the in-between moments and the parts where like maybe they're not the most glamorous, or some of the feelings that we all have about, especially being creators and putting out content. Like, man, it comes with a whole lot of baggage, right? And you're constantly second guessing yourself. You're always in your own head. So it's just, it's really kind of, I don't know what the word is, helpful to hear it from somebody who's so accomplished and know like, look, you got to take those breaks. You got to have those moments where you're just, you don't have to be working and you don't have to be working towards that thing that you're always thinking about. You have to be able to take that step back.
Derek, that book, if I'm not mistaken, Eat, Pray, Love, is Julia Roberts, if I'm not right. That's like,
yeah, I guess the book, that movie is based on her book. Yes.
It sounds like we could all use a little eat, pray, love moment, which I think is more of like it's like a term people use these days to like take break or like find peace or, get in touch with your spirituality. And so maybe D, you should find that moment soon.
I will. And Cal's got his own. It's Live, Laugh, Love, right?
I forget. I think that was fucking around and posted something. Yeah. Live, Laugh, Love is my
yeah, Cal posted that one time, Adam, and I literally made fun of him for about 6 months afterwards, just sending him like different signs that say "Live, Laugh, Love."
Cal's going to Home Goods and he's gonna put up a Live, Laugh, Love in his kitchen.
I already got a sign back home. I have a sign. Yeah, Adam, give us your show.
Okay, show. I've mentioned this before, but it's another Anthony Bourdain reference. When people think of Anthony Bourdain, I think they think of his more modern shows like No Reservations. But the very first show he did was called A Cook's Tour. And when we think about like raw, authentic, or like the OG Anthony Bourdain, like why he was famous, that show is insane. It's available for free on YouTube. It's like I said, OG Anthony Bourdain, like getting into the depths of these places. It's very much more like skewed towards food, but like going into some like very rural third world communities, and like not just that, but just it's incredible. It looks like it's filmed on like an old camcorder. no like political like stuff. Because when he went to CNN, it got very political. This was like a Travel Channel show. Like this was like OG raw. Like they probably wouldn't be able to like show it on cable TV these days. And so it's free. All the episodes are on YouTube. It's like an incredible. Like I throw it on just to hang. It's awesome.
Do you have a favorite spot that like you said, third world countries different? Like, is there one that's if I had to go watch one, and let's say I could only watch one because whatever, like which should I go watch?
Gosh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of the city he went to in Spain, but he has a Spain episode. And let me hold on, because now you're stumping me, and now I'm pissed about it.
As you're looking for it, I just want to say, Adam, I was watching randomly. I was watching No Reservations last night, episode where he was in Tokyo, and I felt like I was.
That's a great episode.
So good.
Yeah, it's so good. I don't know. Here's what I'll say, because not one stands out to me. I think they're all so good, and I've watched them so sporadically, but there's one that stands out where he goes to Spain. That's a very cool episode. I believe there's one where he went to Malaysia or Thailand. I think the Thailand one, he like eats very interesting things. The Thailand episode's really strong, but they're all so good. And it's also sporadic because you're like scrolling through YouTube, So they're all available. It's all free. OG Anthony Bourdain. It's like what I would remember as less than No Reservation stuff.
I gotta go check that out.
You saw the documentary about him, right? Roadrunner, is that what it was?
Yeah,
called?
Roadrunner. Yeah, so Roadrunner was good.
This show, this was like, was this in that phase where like he was still didn't know if this was going to lead to anything? Like,
exactly.
Had he found fame yet, or was this pre-fame?
Well, remember, like he became famous because of the book, right? So when he wrote the book is what really because at the time, like publishing a book was a really big deal and still is, but like he was famous for the book. What then happened was off that fame, these two like producers, folks like wanted to build a show with him. And in Roadrunner, they talk about how it felt like impossible to like do a show with Anthony Bourdain. But then the pieces started coming together. And that is what they allude to in the documentary. And that's the show they're talking about. Yeah, A Cook's Tour.
I gotta check that out. I don't think I've ever seen it before, to be honest. I don't think I've seen
it either.
So many people have never seen it, and it's like free YouTube. No fucking ads, no it's just so OG, authentic Anthony Bourdain. It's really cool.
He's my guy.
I wonder how many of those spots, like you mentioned the Tokyo episode, Malaysia, Spain, like I bet a bunch of them, but how many of those spots are still around? Like, let's say I'm going to Tokyo in a couple months. Like I watched that, there might be some place. I'm just curious. I don't know. I've never seen it. But that'd be cool. I'd definitely check it out.
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, the show came out in 2002, and there's 2 seasons. And the first episode, if I'm not mistaken, is Tokyo. And so you would have to do a little cross-referencing there. I'm not super familiar, but that's a good call out. Like, I wonder if those places still exist. I mean, that's 22 years ago. That's a long time. So, yeah, it's a good question.
So my TV put on a different tip is the sports docuseries. I think there's a few out right now, but I watched the first couple episodes of 2. The one is Starting 5 with which follows the NBA of it's Jason Tatum, Sabonis, LeBron, Anthony Edwards,
Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, and they do a great job at kind of getting behind the scenes. And I think just sports docuseries in general, like what that did for the F1 and what that did for, golf, and they did it for tennis, and now they're doing it in the North American leagues. I watched the NHL face-off on Prime, and that one is fucking really good. Like, you don't see behind the scenes in the NHL as much as you see in NBA, NFL. And so the NHL one is very fucking good. Like, they get behind the scenes. Obviously, it helps that I'm a big Oilers guy, and the Oilers made a run to Game 7 of the Cup, and so they kind of show like all the behind the scenes stuff. And like Edmonton, where I'm from, it's like, how the fuck could you include and make Edmonton look nice in a show? And like, not that they do, but so I would definitely say a sports docuseries clip. Like, you guys should check both those out. And there's a receiver one as well for the NFL. But yeah, the NHL one was really good. NBA, good. Haven't
I'm
watched the football one.
I'm pumped about the NBA one because for my kids, because my oldest son watched quarterback and wide receiver,
Yeah.
loved it. So when I saw the NBA one, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to watch that one with him. Does it go like chronologically throughout the season, or does it bounce back and forth?
I'm through 2 episodes. I would say, yeah, it's been chronological so far. It jumps between players per episode. So sometimes like a team will be in a different stint. And so it's a little bit hard to follow where you're at in the season. But yeah, it's from beginning to end of the season. Like they started preseason and then it goes into.
And then just one other question. Who's the most interesting guy on the
NBA
show?
player?
Got to be Ant, right? I mean, of the 5.
Ant's the most charismatic. If you're talking about most interesting, the way Jimmy is interesting. Like they show him doing like the goth, like why he did the goth pick and like his coffee fascination. Jimmy is probably the most interesting guy. Ant is the most charismatic, and Sabonis is it's a random addition, but he seems like the best guy. He seems like him and his wife and his kids. So yeah, but Jimmy Butler's the most interesting.
Nice.
Can I say something quickly? I know we're going long, but
No.
there's a fascination on the whole like Netflix impact of these shows. But in 2011, HBO did the documentary 24/7 Road to the Winter Classic. It's where like the Winter Classic like originated, right? Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Washington Capitals. This was like Sidney Crosby versus Ovechkin. I will never forget that documentary. That will forever be the best sports documentary I've ever watched. If like you're fascinated with the NHL, because this was like what 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
But it is so fucking good. And can we swear on here? Do you guys swear? You just bleep it out. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like, man, 2011 NHL, like OG before they started making like the Stadium Series and all these bullshit outdoor games, like it is so amazing. And I was a high schooler. We were playing hockey and it rolled out during the hockey season. We'd like watch it before the nights before games and just get like pumped up. It's just such a great show. And I love sports docs.
Who was your favorite player growing up as a hockey guy?
In early days, I was Ovechkin, and it was like, are you Ovechkin or are you Crosby? You know, it was like a big thing for the NHL. It was great because you had to decide, right? And like, what a huge thing! Like in today's world, that'd be great for the sport. But I was an Ovechkin guy, moved to a Crosby guy, and probably still am to this day.
Okay. Well, on that, Derek, I know we got a couple places each that we want to put Adam onto. You give him yours, and then I'll go.
All right, Adam, I have 2 places, and I also have one other just like associated thing with one of the places, or not one of them, both of them. So first place, have you ever been to Bermuda?
I've never been to Bermuda.
Really?
But I know it's like an hour and a half flight to New York. We had a great conversation with Bermuda Air, which is like a new airline that's like doing a lot of flights out of the East Coast direct. And it's like, people are saying it's like this up and coming place. The problem with Bermuda, D, and I'll let you go, is that it's so expensive. It's so expensive. But go ahead. Sorry.
It is a little bit expensive. I'm glad that you've never been there. The fact that it's a tropical spot that's an hour and a half plane ride. So I went for my 10-year anniversary a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I just think it's like a gem, known for their pink beaches. It's like, it's a paradise, but it's like a blend of British, American, and tropical cultures. I know it's like British territories. And it's just in my opinion, a spot that's never really mentioned as a destination spot so much. But I loved it. And I stayed at a little hotel called the Lauren, and it felt like we were the only
5-star.
Oh, it was very nice. And it felt like we were the only people there. And so first spot that you should go to, first class jerk, Bermuda. That's number one.
Can I give my take on Bermuda?
Sure.
So this was a couple years ago as well. I feel like we went to Bermuda at similar times. I got a call I'm in Palm Springs at the tennis tournament, Adam, and I got a call from AJ. And he goes, "Yo, can you get to Bermuda in 2 days to golf?" And I was on the West Coast, and I'm like, "Shit, yeah, let me see what I can make happen." So within like a couple of days, I fly from Palm Springs, I go to Bermuda, and I'm there like alone, like as a single, young, whatever, 21-year-old. And my issue with Bermuda is it's very, it's like couples, like older people, like there's not much happening, and it's expensive as fuck. I will say the beaches and the water. The only other place that's comparable for me is the Maldives. That's the only other, like the water and the
Wow.
beaches. It's up there.
That's
I
a
would say the
crazy
Maldives
comparison.
number one, Bermuda number two for me. In terms of how beautiful
Yeah.
that is. So that's there. And then the only other thing is it's like I rented a moped and it's the driving on the other side of the road. And so there were several times where I'm like zipping around the corners on the wrong side of the road. And so I just kept having to play the song in my head, like to the left, and that just was on repeat in my fucking head, and I was staying left. But
That's a great
Bermuda,
share.
yeah, you got to go. Beautiful as fuck, but yeah, not a lot.
The Lauren and the Hamilton Princess are two hotels I'm
Hamilton,
familiar with out there.
yep,
We've had
great,
extensive conversations with Bermuda because they were like trying to promote. I mean, it's a destination where it's like, okay, it's an hour and a half away from New York, but it's beautiful. The issue is the tourism boards are like having a tough time getting people there because one, it's so expensive and like accommodations are pretty limited. Like in terms of hotels,
yeah,
it's pretty limited out there.
And I should have mentioned that like it's not like a party spot. It's like where you go with a significant other. It's like more of a romantic spot. Also very colorful architecture. I was
great
just
art.
I was into Bermuda, and I think I drank maybe like 30 to 40 dark and stormies over the course of like 4 days. So
Yeah.
Tell us what's a dark and stormy. Tell us that.
Oh,
what is that?
Delicious. It's like rum with ginger beer. And it's very good. I like, and by the way, we talked about ginger ale before. I just want you to know my favorite mixer is ginger ale. I'll put ginger ale in anything, but if you put it in rum, it tastes like cream soda. And if you put in like tequila, it also kind of tastes a little bit like cream soda, not as good. And you can put it in anything, ginger ale, but if you ever go there, you got to try a dark and stormy, delicious. So that's one. And then the other one, just very quick, is because I was out east this past weekend visiting my mother, and it made me think about the idea of going out east in the off season. Okay, so everybody goes out east, to the Hamptons during the summer, but obviously, there's not a lot of people out there during the fall, during the winter, and it's beautiful out there. And there's something really nice to me about just being out in nature when it's cold, being on a beach when it's cold, and being out in such a beautiful spot, whether it be the Hamptons or Amagansett or Montauk, without the throngs of people. You could still enjoy the restaurants. Would rent a place that has a fireplace to get those like ski lodge type of vibes. And definitely not going to cost an arm and a leg like it would in the summer. So off peak, going out east, that's my second location. And then the last thing I was just going to say is with both of these locations, I'm going to put you onto one other thing, which is, look, I'm a bit of a weird guy. We've already established that, right? I have an eclectic taste. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I am a big seashell collector.
I didn't know that.
I'm a big seashell collector. And every time I go on a beach, I'm on a mission to find interesting seashells. And not only am I a big seashell collector, I have them all over my desk. So first off, this one right now is the one that I've been holding because I love the way it feels.
Oh, it's like a rock.
Yeah, it does look like a rock.
It is. And then
it's not a seashell. It's a fucking rock.
Well, if you find a rock or a shell, like I got this guy right here, got one of these guys right here, got this kind of like coral looking thing right there. You see that?
That is coral.
Yeah. When I tell you I have rocks all over my my desk, my
Hey, these are fucking seashells,
Whoa.
okay? These are seashells, okay?
Well,
don't show me a rock.
I swear, I literally have so many rocks on my desk.
Now he's changed it to rocks.
Is like this one is my favorite. I like, you know how I like to like hold the poppets, right? That's what I do with these little like rock. Look at this guy. Is like
rock.
Black
That's
guy.
a fucking rock, bro.
Yeah,
cut the podcast. We're done. This is it. Clip it.
Comes me holding like shells and rocks that I find at the beach, and I just think it's a fun hobby, especially for someone like you two who travel a lot, go to different beaches. Bring me back some interesting seashells, and I'll add them to my collection.
You know what my favorite thing from the beach is? Sand dollars. That's my favorite. You guys know sand dollars?
Don't know what that is. Is that what a sand dollar is?
No, this isn't a sand dollar. Those are my favorite. Sand dollars. Give us the. I know what sand dollars is. You can find them all over Florida beaches and St. Pete, all over. Go ahead, Cal.
You take it. You probably do a better description.
No, I know. I like sand dollars. I like sand dollars, but you can't get the live ones. They're just, you know what I mean? Because they're live. You got to have the dead ones.
Sand dollars are like, think of like, okay, whatever. When a starfish washes up, and then if it's washed up for long enough, it dries out. Obviously, sand dollars are living, but they wash up on the beach, and they're like they're perfectly round, and they are, you see them?
I'm looking at them right now. Never seen this before in my entire life.
I cannot believe you don't know what a sand dollar is.
Never heard of it.
This conversation is crazy.
And he collects shells or rocks.
I
don't believe these are real things. This looks like something that would be in a bakery. This doesn't look like a real.
No, sand dollars are real, man. Sand dollars are beautiful.
This is unhinged right now. This is unbelievable. Steven's gonna have a heyday with this. Sand dollars are great. Oh, I appreciate a sand dollar. I do. And I do think, I will say, collectibles on trips make I'm the collectible world is like a whole thing, but like the thing that I do on each trip is I get sand. So like this is somewhat illegal in ways, but like on beaches, I'll grab sand. I've been to deserts, I'll grab the sand of deserts. In Iceland, grab the rocks, and they're all in these little vials, and I have them in like a row of labels. So I think the whole knick-knack, people collect fridge magnets or whatever. Like I have a great respect for that type of thing. So listen, seashells is great, and rocks. You should have mentioned rocks because what you showed first was a rock, not a seashell.
Well, if you're looking in the ocean. And you're looking in the ocean and you take whatever is down there, it's all they're seashells.
Sea rock. Sea rock. That's awesome.
That's hilarious. So Adam, what about hotel room keys and shit? Because hotels are moving away. Some hotels are moving away from room keys, do different things. But like the actual hotel room keys is a collectible.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm not like that. Originally, I was like at a earlier in my life of traveling, I was collecting a lot of things, but I had to kind of confine it because I became a hoarder. And so now it's just exclusive to sand. And if it's not like, I'm not going to a tropical destination and it's not sand, it'll be something else in like a vial. But yes, I respect the room key. I think moving to electronic room keys makes sense for big hotel chains, but I'm still like a fan of like a traditional turnkey style thing that you probably wouldn't be able to take home with you. You got to return. But I get the room key thing. I get it.
Okay. Well, I want to put you on to not specifically places. I want to put you onto a couple hotels that I stayed at in my travels over the last couple months that I think First Class Jerk needs to cover some. I got some footage that I can send you, but it needs to cover somehow. But the first one was in Indonesia, in Bali, in Ubud, so which is kind of like the not on the beach, it's in the jungle. And I stayed at the Padma, and just look up photos of it. But like, bro, that hotel, like you talk about attention to detail, like the pool is an infinity pool right in the like. It's probably the craziest pool I've ever been at. Like, yeah, when you look it up, you'll see what I'm talking about. But stayed there for a few nights. That was amazing.
I love
so
that.
yeah, Ubud, Padma, great spot.
I've heard of it. I've heard
Okay,
of
you
it.
have.
Never been to. I've heard of it, but I've never been to that region or that area.
You got it.
But I hear a
You
lot
got
of
to.
amazing things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you got to. And then the other one is in Thailand, in Phuket, the Surin, which are cabins. Like it's like 164 cabins, like right in the water. The pool is great. Like, yeah, beautiful spot. Very. I stayed there for like a week, and it was amazing.
Wow.
The service, all top to bottom. So, yeah, those are the two hotels, places I want to put.
So now I gotta ask if y'all have a list you can send me, because I love any type of recommendation. I'm familiar at a high level of the places you've mentioned, but I've never been as fortunate as you to stay there. So that's awesome. I love that. Thailand is a place that's so high on the list.
You've never been, Adam. You've never been to Thailand?
Never been to Thailand.
Because I have.
You got it.
It was amazing.
Have you been, D? Have you been?
I did. When I was abroad, back in my college days, I went there on a trip to Phuket and Chiang Mai, Bangkok, and it's incredible. One of the best trips I've ever taken.
So, I mean, everyone comes back with that feedback. It's so good.
You got to go. We'll have to give you the recommendations. But I was that's where I'm born. Like, I'm from Thailand. That's my spot. So, yeah.
You're from
like
Thailand?
I was born.
Can't you tell? Can't you tell?
You
Look at him.
Why were you? That raises so many questions. So that's why So your family was living in Thailand and you were born there. Like, what were they doing there?
Yeah, both my parents are Canadian, international banking and like import export. And yeah, man, yeah. My parents are obviously white, but I was born in Bangkok, lived there. And yeah,
how long?
I have
For how
long? 3 years. We moved around, like Hong Kong, Singapore, London, England, like lots of places.
Crazy life.
Yeah, it was it was dope moving around every couple of years.
We like to joke that he's like Carmen Sandiego, Callum Sandiego.
That's awesome. Dude, that is crazy. We'll have to dive into that more. That's gnarly. I did not know that about you.
But my point being that when you go to Thailand, you say you know Cal, they got you. So
come on, whoa. That's a big claim, dude. That's a big claim. Now that makes me want to go to Thailand. Mr. Worldwide. Seriously though, in all seriousness, send the Thailand recommendations because it's 100%. Really high on the list.
100% we'll do. Thank you for tuning into the Put On Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to follow us on social @the Put On Pod.